when you, by paying attention to the details, you can see the beauty of the connections of the simple parts in creating the larger overall task thing, whatever it is. you know it's so yeah, so definitely, uh God is in the details, and it's this attention to detail that we completely lack. And that is the thing that I uh uh am uh sometimes overbearingly, okay, uh, stress my instructors to do, in which they fail in the beginning all the time, you know. But as they start to see more, well, first being practicing calmness, right, which requires them to be more confident and more empowered, and then that makes them calm. And when they're calm, they're not stressed, and they can see more. They can think clearly. They can see clearly. They can even feel and emote clearly. Then they can start to see greater details in things.
Yeah. Beautiful, sir. All right. Hello. This is Ferny Ceballos. Welcome to Live by the Sword with Grandmaster Taejoon Lee. It's been a little while. Happy New Year. We are in 2023 and here to discuss an article that Grandmaster recently published in Budo Journal. But before we get into that topic, Grandmaster Lee, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. Happy New Year. This is the year of the rabbit. So hopefully there's lots of fruitful multiplying.
Is that what that's supposed to mean, sir?
Yeah, multiplying of luck.
Well, sir, you recently got published again on Budo Journal. You wrote an article called "How to Achieve," and there's a lot to unpack. And I think it's part one of, I guess, two or multiple series. How many articles
Yeah,
can we
it's
expect?
it's three parts. This is the first one. The second one is a complete article on no excuses, which is a reference to something I wrote before. And then the third one is just being released in February this month.
Awesome,
It's
fantastic.
actually upcoming article in March.
In March, okay, got
Yeah,
it. And the second one, when is that going to be released?
that's this month right now.
This month in January. Okay, so it's like month after month.
Yeah.
Awesome, sir. Well, I read it. It's fantastic. It actually reminded me a lot of the lessons I learned while training.
Hmm.
And what stuck out for me were some of the simple things. It was like the deep lessons you learn and the simple things that happen. And I'm sure we'll hop into it. Um, the one of the first things you mentioned in the article is as it relates to time or time
Yeah.
management. And you say that if you don't control it, it'll control you. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, I think uh, we feel as though time is something that, of course, is finite. We can't do anything about it. There's no way we can extend more time or less time. Many people, say that they wish they had more time, uh, but it is not time itself that is the issue. It is the perception of time that we have that's the issue. So some of us, uh, innately, we have this disposition, that we are short in time. That we have to do everything hurry. The time is short and it's very limited. Uh, some on the contrary, many people think they have all the time in the world. So they're not rushed. They're pretty laid back, and casual in their approach. Um, Whatever the case, um, if we know that time is finite, time is not something that we can change, then definitely it is the perception of time that we do have control over. So if we realize that we are always thinking that there is a shortage of time, then that means that that desiring more time is a futile endeavor, or something that's never going to happen. It's an impossibility. So you have to change and slow your pace, and perceive time differently. I suppose the people who perceive time to be, very long and slow, or you have plenty of time, I guess those people don't have to worry. But interestingly enough, people who think there's a lot of time and think things casually or whatever, they actually don't do much either, right? So it's also that when you're doing a lot, then you're that's the person that thinks that, and they need more time, right? People who don't do a lot, then then they think they have all the time in the world, right? Because they're not pressed for time. So as so it is that control of what we perceive time to be. That's something that we have to uh, understand and utilize. And if we don't do that, then definitely, um, then time is controlling you. You're not grasping it, so you're always going to be panicking. You're always going to have a shortage of time. You're always going to be, rushing through things. So. So the idea of adding more hours in the day is not going to happen. And even if it were the case that there were more hours in the day, uh, you still would not have enough time. So if you had 26 hours or 28 hours in the day, um, you're never going to have enough time. So time is not the issue. If you ever want to get things done or do things, you have to make the time to do them. So you have to manage it. You have to manage the time that you have. And instead of doing that, we just let time take its course, and then of course that's what's then will you know rule our lives, right? If you don't take control of it, then it's going to rule your life.
So in other words, you're really talking about someone planning, planning their day, because you mentioned a anecdote from Korea, your time in Korea as a kid, and that
Yeah,
was one of the first things they taught you. Can you talk about that?
yeah, that's see, it's the time management, right? It's the management of time. And interestingly enough, in Korea, I mean, this is of course in the 60s and early 70s. The first thing at first grade, right? Of course, you learn how to read clock, read time, and along with that, you have to go ahead and make a pie chart, right, of the 24 hours, and you have to divide it up into the minutes, and you have to plan out your day. What time you wake up, when to brush your teeth, when to wash, when to eat breakfast, when to go to school, come home, when to do your homework, when to play, when to have dinner, when to sleep. I mean, everything is written out, and it's planned and it's kept on that schedule. You make a big like a poster of it. You put it in the on the wall, and you stick to that. And of course, your parents are also involved in that, and they follow that schedule. I think that is a very good practice to do. I mean, I don't know the education system, uh, in Korea, if they purposefully did this, understanding that or not. But that was one of the most important tools at an early age that I had uh, coming to America, and that allowed me to plan out my day, and that helped. I mean, of course, that's what's helped me all throughout my life, is being able to manage the time properly.
Got it. And you also talk about, like, obviously things don't always go according to plan. So even if you plan, something goes off. You are sharing a lot in the context of training, and for example, being late to class, and those that are not managing their time effectively, not planning ahead or thinking of what else might happen. What if there's traffic? All those contingencies. Those are the people that usually are late. But you also talk about that those people also are the ones that like worry the most. Like they get most stressed out for something they failed to do, and it kind of just becomes this snowball of negative consequences. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. I mean, I mean, being in Los Angeles, I think we all deal with that. We've all had that experience. We try to rush through, and we make ample time to go ahead and go somewhere, but then we get stuck in traffic. Um, but actually, if you plan well, right, in LA, most of the time, right, unless there's an accident or something that's unforeseen, you can avoid traffic. I mean, or the traffic hours, it, and it's pretty consistent, right? So if you plan knowing that, then you shouldn't be late as much. But let's say that you did all the planning, you did it, you left your house or planned to leave half hour earlier or an hour, whatever it is, you did that, and something that unforeseen took place. Uh, well, I mean, you stressing about it, worrying about it, or thinking about getting in trouble or doing whatever. And of course, when our classes, when you're late, right? Everybody do knuckle push-ups, right? It doesn't matter for us when you're late. Um, uh, you know, e- Everybody ends up doing them, whether it's 30 or 50 or 100. We do the knuckle push-ups.
The higher rank, the more knuckle push-ups you do.
That's right. That's right. So, children, we start with the little kids, 10, with the juniors, 20, adults, 30, our assistant instructors, 30, and instructors or black belts they do 100. Okay.
Mhm.
uh, and yeah, that so what you do is that when you know that you're going to be late, even though you planned, there's nothing that you can do to change that and alter that. Then by you worrying about it, stressing about it, being frantic about it, or panicking, uh, is not going to change that situation. In fact, it's going to make it worse, right? So you go to class, you're upset, you're frustrated, or anything, meeting or whatever it is. You're rushing, you're sweating, you maybe you in the process you lose something, you drop something, right? And then you go and have the meeting, or you get into class, you're not focused, then you can't retain the material, you get in more trouble, or you lose the deal, etc., and just negative upon negative compounds itself. So the thing to practice in that moment, is anything, is that when it's out of your control, then that's the time that you have to take a step back, take a deep breath, relax, and just enjoy the ride. I like to say the idea, recently Southern California was hit with the biggest storm, okay, since 15 years, right? It's knocking down, piers. Sunset Beach is right there. The Seal Beach is right there.
Mhm.
The piers knocked down, many piers in up Northern California, Central. It's destroying a lot of property, etc. Right? Oh, big storm. Everybody's worried and whatever. Well, for surfers, it was like the biggest, it was like the best thing that ever happened in 15, 20 years, right? And they're all out there surfing and having a great time. Huh? So I like to say it's that mentality you got to have. You got to ride the storm, right? You got to ride the storm.
Well, there was a well, I remember being late to class quite a few times, especially early on. As I trained more and became more mature and learned lessons, I was late less. But what I remember was in the beginning was one, you were, obviously you're very strict. Discipline is a core tenet of Hwarang Do and what we do. And so I wasn't accustomed to that. I was accustomed to kind of just, being kind of like lackadaisical and, whatever happens, happens. And so, but then now knowing that I'm going to be late, that I'm worrying about you being upset with me, and that I have to do these knuckle push-ups, which I'm not accustomed to doing, and they hurt my hand, and then worried about that you're going to be so upset with me that you're going to like be harder on me during class.
Right.
And it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because of all that worry.
Yeah.
I go into class, rushed, kind of
Right.
frazzled, and then inevitably I screw something up, a technique or
Right.
how I'm moving, and then you are harder on me
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
it
Exactly.
was self-fulfilling for me. And then, but eventually I learned, like, I still didn't like to be late, and I was late less frequently. But I learned that I just needed to accept the consequences. Like, that's I could do nothing about it. So be as calm as possible, accept doing the knuckle push-ups. Doing knuckle push-ups gets a little easier, doesn't hurt as much. You grow calluses.
Exactly.
But then I was able to go in and realize I can still have a great class. I can still, from the point I entered, do the very best I can and have a good class. And those were some of the best classes I ever had
Yeah.
because I entered with a mind of just accept the consequences, not
Yeah.
worry about that. I can't control it. And it was just I found it interesting. So you talk about the we're talking about the snowball effect.
Yeah.
And there's so many lessons in what I just shared. There's you know the accepting of consequences, or accept the
Absolutely.
consequences of failure. There's the lessons around focus, around what you can control, and so many things that I don't. And that's what I was speaking about earlier, sir, about, like, in such a small thing there were so many lessons to extract
Absolutely.
that I carried forward. I don't know if you wanted to focus on any one of those, but
N- No, no, I mean, no, but but all these things that I've written out, I mean, it's consistent to this idea of the warrior's mind, right? Of the warrior's path.
Mhm.
And you hit the nail on the head, right? And it is that one thing. It's the accepting of consequences, right? So it's that idea, that ethos as a warrior going into battle. You don't go into battle thinking, being afraid to die. You go to battle already accepting the worst case scenario, the worst consequence, which is death. So that it's that whole idea. It's the same thing here. Because you're late doesn't mean you're absolved from the consequences, and that's why we have the knuckle push-ups. You have to do them. It doesn't matter why you're late, how you're late. It doesn't matter. Okay, and it doesn't matter as soon as we start the class. You're not there. You're late. All right, and you must do the knuckle push-ups. There's no way around it. So you have to accept the consequence that you do the knuckle push-ups. Just because you don't want to do them, just a few knuckle push-ups and whatever it is, which in fact it's uncomfortable, but we do knuckle push-ups for a specific reason. And that is to deaden the nerves in the knuckles, to strengthen your wrist and also build callus so that when you actually hit somebody, that your wrist doesn't buckle and that you have a strong fist. So in reality, what if doing a lot of knuckle push-ups will make you stronger, and as you do more, you can do more because you're more tolerant to the pain and etc. So uh that eh, so thinking to avoid the consequence, that one little thing is going to trigger you to fail and make all kinds of mistakes. As long as you can accept the consequences, then you can be at peace and be calm. And that's one of the things in there is it's practicing of calmness. But that's what that is, right? That is the warrior's path. That is what is to be Hwarang. Is that it? And that transcends to everything. Just to give you a little story, right? So remember in West LA, I had the studio there, and um, so I had issue with a parent, right? One of the parents came up and said, because if the parents are late, right, and they bring their kids late, the kids have to do the knuckle push-ups, right? It's not the parents. I can't make the parents do the knuckle push-ups, which actually, in fact, it's the parents that need to do the knuckle push-ups, right? But they're not my students, so I can't make them do the knuckle push-ups. So the kids will have to do the knuckle push-ups. So one of the parents came up to me and suggested the idea, hey, the kid was trying to be on time. It's actually my fault, right? That I can bring him on time. So it's not really, I don't think it's really fair, that the kids do the knuckle push-ups, right? So I like, okay, if the kids don't do the knuckle push-ups, then you do the knuckle push-ups, because somebody has to pay for being late, for being consequence. So you know what? Well, we know we can't do the knuckle push-ups. So I tell you what, why don't you make a donation box? Okay, make a donation box, and if we're late, okay, then we will donate some money, right? And I said, what do you suppose? What How can what how much do you think that would be? Well, the problem of all that is, well, you can, whether whatever amount you said, $2, $5, $10, or whatever it is, well, who's going to enforce that? So it can't be enforced, right? So I say, okay, you think that's a great idea? Okay, all right. If you say, why don't we go ahead and discuss with the parents and see if they agree to that? And then okay, let's try to do that. And I said, normally I won't do this, but since, I wanted the parents also to, you know, if you said to uh, uh, show them, how actually absurd their idea is. I said, okay, let's just go along with it. So we did that. We did, whatever, right? And then, I had a person then stand by the donation box and enforce the idea and enforce them to go ahead and pay a minimum of whatever amount of money it is. Well, when you start doing that, it caused all kinds of problems. Some people didn't have money, they don't have the cash, they couldn't pay. If they, then they would have to take a rain check, and I mean, it became a whole, thing, issue with them. So ultimately, the parents suggested, no, that's not a good idea. It's not going to work. We're sorry, and we went back to having them do the knuckle push-ups. As a parent, what they were trying to do is take away the consequences of what the kids what the kids were enduring, not by wanting to fix their behavior and them as a parent who's responsible for the child to be more on time and plan properly. Rather than doing that, they wanted to bicker about the execution, or the
It's the
the
issue around
fulfill
fairness.
yeah, the fulfillment of the consequence, rather than dealing with preventing it from happening in the first place. So I had discussion, of course, with a parent. We had discussed that, and in the process, the parents also have learned that, and that the important lesson there is that whether the child, and one of the points I make to them is, you know, if in school, or whatever, they go to school, and if you take them to school late and they're marked tardy at school, I tell them, who does that hurt? Does that hurt you, or does it hurt the child? Right? And of course, the tardiness mark hurts and affects the child. It doesn't affect the parent, right? So as a person, a guardian who's responsible for the parent, then it's up to them to make sure that their children are on time and do not suffer the consequences because of their wrongdoing. So I mean, in the process, there was a lesson learned for everybody.
I'm curious, did any parent offer to do the knuckle push-ups?
No, no, of course not.
They
Of
never
course
did.
not. Of course not. Of course not. No one wants to do knuckle push-ups. It's not pleasant. Push-ups, okay, but knuckle push-ups, no. On the wood, no.
So, sir, so we, in your article, you talk more than just about, managing one's time, and of course, in that there's accepting a responsibility. But you have a quote. I quote you actually, in to many of my students in the business world. It's the longest distance between 2 points is a shortcut.
Yeah,
And what do you mean by that? But specifically, I guess, what do you mean by that from a martial arts standpoint?
yeah. Well, I mean, that's always, people are looking for easy ways. You know, I just recently heard somebody who's a very successful business person, and there's three things that he says is a detriment uh, uh, or the cause of people's uh, failing and being unsuccessful. And that's one of them. Trying to look for easy ways, trying to you know, and that's the that's the whole problem of looking for a shortcut. They're looking for easy ways to solve the problem, but in doing that, they miss the entire point, because there's a lesson to be learned in dealing with whatever the consequences, the struggle, the challenges, and not trying to find a quick and easy way. The other quote that I use a lot, that which is not by me, but it's similar to that. It's anonymous quote, and that is the following the path of least resistance is what makes rivers and men crooked. you know so it's trying to find easy ways that takes them into the wrong path. So um, so just deal with it. You got to accept it. Whatever comes, whatever the consequence, whatever mistakes you made, you have to face it. You have to deal with it. Trying to get around it, trying to alleviate it, trying to lessen it, trying to avoid it, that's going to get you in a lot more trouble uh, than just dealing with the problem head on. And that also is another important virtue and lesson in martial art, is dealing anything you deal with, any conflict, any fears, any doubts, any resistance, any challenge, anything that you're uncomfortable or whatever, any of those negative things. The only way to overcome them is you have to face up to them. Okay, you have to face up to them. There's no way around it. And you delay it longer, and you try to avoid it, it's going to get worse later in dealing with it
Mm.
later, rather than dealing with it sooner.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Even with what I do marketing. I have a sales team in my business, and oftentimes people don't want to do something because whether it be financial or some other thing, life is in the way. Let's wait for a better time. And I always tell my clients, it's like, whatever problems you shared with me today, time isn't going to fix them. Time is going to make them worse.
Absolutely.
And you're going to, you know, and so I actually, one of the most important things I ask them, or my team members ask them, is like, okay, let's play this out. Let's move into the future, 1 year, 5 years.
Yeah.
If you don't make a change, what does that look like? And sometimes they answer, well, nothing will change. It'll just be like kind of like now. But we, eventually arrive at the conclusion that no, it actually gets worse. If you don't do something about a problem, the problem gets worse. It doesn't even stay the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what that, and I do that. Two most common uh reasons, right, or excuses for people not doing something, or excuse to not do, is I don't have the time, or I don't have the money.
Hmm.
Right? It's those two things, right? Um, and that's an excuse to not do. I mean, if across the board, right? It's the same with you, right? It's the same with me, any person. So the thing is, then you have to determine how much do I want it, right? If you're not willing to make the time, or you're not willing to spend the money, the question is you're not you don't want it bad enough, right? If you want it bad enough, then you have to make the time, or you're gonna have to get the money or make the money. So it is a matter of how much you want it. Your lacking of desire and motivation is the issue. It's not the point that you don't have money or you don't have time. That's just an easy cop out, easy way for people, to whatever. One of the, for instance, a lot of people. That's why I don't know if in our questions, we have as a prospect when they come in, it asks them the question, do you smoke? Yes or no. Uh, not so that we can go ahead and criticize them. Oh, you're a smoker, whatever, and shame them. We have that there for this one particular reason. So let's say we go ahead and start talking to them, right, about the tuition and so forth. And we tell them, okay, they realize this is something good for you. This is for your health. It's for your benefit. It'll make you stronger. You'll learn, self defense. You might protect yourself. You might be able to save somebody else's life, not only yours, et cetera, et cetera. All the benefits, right? Tremendous benefit in training. And then, at the end of it, they go, oh, I don't know if I can afford it. And I go through that. I go, oh, I see that you smoke. I see that you smoke, you know? So how much is it? How much do you smoke? A pack, so you smoke about a pack a day. Okay. Pack a day is about, well, now it's a lot, right? Back then it was at $5. Now it's almost $10, right? So
I don't know.
yeah, I'm sure it's like $10, right?
But I think
So
now there's taxes on top of it too that doubles
yeah,
the
yeah,
price. So
right. So
it's
so
crazy.
let's say it's even $5, right? $5 a day, right? 10 days, that's $50. 30 days in 1 month, that's $150. So you quit smoking, then you could afford it. You can more than afford it, you know? I mean, think about that. If it's $10 now, oh shoot, that's like, what is that? That's 10 times 10.
Well,
That's 100. That's 300.
300 a
Yes,
month. If it's
it's
28,
300 a month.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like 15 or 20, like with all the taxes and stuff, because it's being discouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you see what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
uh, so my point is that is whenever somebody tells me they don't have time or money, I confront it. I don't say, "Oh yeah, okay." I don't do that. So I confront it.
Yeah,
Right.
and also I think most of the time I find they just haven't they lack vision in from two standpoints. One, they lack the vision of the consequences in the future if they don't do something,
Of
and
course.
they lack the vision of the benefits in the future if they do it.
Of
Like,
course.
and they don't think about what life looks like if they do or they don't.
Of course. Of
Which
course.
not thinking about it makes it easy to, like, say no and not move forward.
Of course. I mean,
Yeah,
there are many reasons. I mean, people don't fail just because life is cruel. And it's not that. You know,
yes, sir. So, sir,
that's right.
you went into your article speaking of doing things that are hard. Uh, you talk about one's training and specifically around having students, you know, practice a technique, doing it incrementally, and then practicing it with a partner until it becomes muscle memory. But then also getting to the point where we compete. Where not every martial arts school requires not every martial arts school that's not Hwarang Do requires their students to compete to actually have some sort of at least a sport like a physical combat. And so, can you speak on what's the reason you require all your students, including me, to compete in tournaments throughout the year and to the main tournament that we have? And uh, what's the reason the other schools don't? Other schools just practice techniques, but they don't actually require competition for their students. What's the value of that?
Yeah. Well, the important thing in martial art is what martial art is. Martial art is about fighting, right? So we're not yoga or aerobics. It's not a fitness class. And many people maybe take martial art for that reason, which is fine. But fitness, health, flexibility, stamina, whatever, flexibility, all those things are a byproduct of of the of the training to do what? It's about fighting. So if you don't engage in what we say, there's two types of learning: static and dynamic. So static, you learn the techniques, one to one or by yourself, and you learn it in repetition, the movements. And then you have to put it into dynamic application, which is now undetermined, unpredetermined, uh, uh, um, uh, random fighting, right? Free sparring. So you need to be able to do that, put it into application. And then you have to compete because it's another different level of training than just free sparring somebody. Then when you're under that pressure and that you got to compete and be tested, um, you know, so you have to, as a martial art, you have to be engaged in the competition, in the dynamic application, to really understand it. The real value comes from that, because when you do that, that's when you have to really face up, right? Face up to fear, face up to, fear potentially of getting injured, fear of injury of the other person, etc. um, Fear of embarrassment, fear of failure, fear of losing, all those things. And those are the essential things that is what you need to deal with, and what's going to, uh, you know, help you to grow. That's the true benefit of martial arts. If you don't do competition, if you don't do the dynamic, sparring or fighting, then then it's just fitness. Then it's just aerobics. There is no real value to it. So yeah, that's a necessary part of training.
And then there's the, you might be able to do something in training really well, even in sparring in training really well. But then there's a whole other level of pressure and fear in competing against somebody that maybe you've never, sparred against or fought
Absolutely,
against.
absolutely.
And I remember the first time I was in, tournament, I'm like nervous, mind's all over the place. There's no calmness at all. And that was a valuable experience because as time went on, as I did that more and as I trained longer, time seemed to slow down, when I was competing, time slowed down, as I did certain things. And I realized I was learning to be calm and slow things down, even if I felt the pressure, even if I was still scared, even of all
Yeah,
that. And I mean, isn't that really what you need during an actual fight? Like if you were actually defending yourself, that's what you need. Because I guess I'm thinking so many times, what people learn goes out the window, and when they're in a in a panic state of fear.
yeah. I mean, I do talk about all this stuff in the article, and one of, the thing that, uh, there's a lot of the things in there, right? One of the things that I talk about is that take it seriously, right? That you
Hmm.
have to take this seriously. So if you don't take it seriously, then it's not going to benefit you. If you look at it as something that's, casual, then that's what you're going to get. You get what you put into it. So if you take it lightly and you don't put time and effort into it, then you're not going to get paid back. The benefits are going to be minimal. You have to remember that this is about fighting, right? So if it is about fighting, I'd like to just read, you know, so just read one of the paragraphs here. The reality is that in martial arts training, the real goal is not physical fitness, confidence, weight loss, or even getting a black belt. It is how well you can fight. All the other benefits gained are fringe benefits, which are secondary. Therefore, the real question you need to be asking yourself when learning a martial art is, can I defend myself properly against an attacker? Unfortunately, this is too often forgotten and set aside, with its practitioners mainly focusing on the fringe benefits. If we were attacked by aggressors on a daily basis, then this would be different. In today's society, it is rare that we are attacked, and thank God that this is the case. But you're understanding the point, right? I mean, how much, it's not a matter, okay, go to class every day. Do this regularly to get in shape. That's not the thing that a person needs to think about when they're doing martial arts. The real question you got to be asking yourself: can I use this to defend myself in a violent altercation? And if you ask that question, can I do that? Well, the answer is going to be probably not. So it's not enough that you go and get a belt or pass an exam to get your next belt or that you're able to spar well and on one person who's barely doing anything, try to really hurt you. You know the how much do you really need to train to answer that question sufficiently? You know, when you address it like that, it's there is not enough uh, time in the day. Uh, you cannot be training enough to be ready for the most violent attack, right? So this is the this is the frame of mind. This is a state of mind that people need to change, right? When they're doing martial arts, in or in the word is right there. Martial, warlike, right? It's warlike. It's battle, right? I just had a student, one of the parents, a couple of teenagers, you know and the complaint the parent made was, and they stopped training, is that oh, it seemed too militant. And like, what, and you know how we are, we explain all these things in the very beginning when they join, you know and it's all explained to them. And that's why, whenever somebody says, that's what it's called, martial art, right? What do you think martial is? It's militant, it's military, it's
Liter-
war.
Literally means the art of war.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not civil art, it's martial art. What is it that they didn't understand? You know? Um, and so, that's so, so in thinking it that way, you have to take it seriously, you have to train regularly, and the question is not, am I getting health benefits? Am I getting fit? The question is, can I really use it to defend myself? And when you ask that question in that way, uh, you know, it becomes a whole different issue. The entire point today, right, is we're blessed. We're blessed, right? We hopefully none of us will ever be attacked. It's very rare that those things ever happen. But
Mhm,
in not so long ago, it's only been a little over 100 years, that dueling has been outlawed. you
mhm.
know that people will be dueling.
The good old days.
You know, so uh, you know either you're sharp and you're trained and you know what you're doing, or you die. And if that's the case, it would be very, very different.
Mhm,
Now, uh, I also talk about the idea of calmness, you know um, and that ultimately, I mean, that's really the practice, right? Is one of the huge benefits. See, even though we're not being constantly attacked, or living with that threat of attack, immediate attack, or violent altercation on a daily basis, the way it can benefit you is the practice of calmness under pressure, under threat, under stress. Um, and every day you go to class, you know, you're confronted, with uh, people. Okay, okay, good. Yeah, whenever I'm talking with somebody, he wants attention. Uh,
Yeah.
when 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 I'm all alone, nothing. He does nothing. But when I'm engaged with somebody else, then he wants my attention.
Yeah, he's jealous. He's like a little boy.
Unbelievable. Um, yeah. So I mean, think about that. That's the huge, huge benefit. I mean, I one of the instructor that I have right now, he's very high strung, here in Luxembourg, and in the practice of leading and taking charge and whatever it is, right? Um, he's now able to do more. He just had a second child, right? So he has two infants he's caring for. He got a promotion at his job, right? He's under and now has control of many more people. He's getting commendations from his boss, Okay. That's the practice of calmness right there.
Well, you didn't have to say anything. You snapped your
Right.
fingers. And
Right.
it was like the Jedi mind trick.
Well, yeah, that is. I mean, you know about that. I mean, I got my dog to practice calmness, and that's
Mhm,
a very interesting thing, right? When you get upset and whatever, you say, don't do," you know, they feed off on your energy and they get more excited. But when you're calm and breathe and you tell them to do, then they listen.
mhm.
You know, um, so so same. So with this, uh, with my instructor here, yeah, I mean, he can't praise, and thank me enough, right? Of how much he's changed. He's seeing himself change, and not only that, right? At work, his boss is constantly, saying, how, what makes you be able to do that? How can you do that? And of course, he credits to Hwa Rang Do, you know, and that's great. And ultimately, that's the entire practice. I even advise people, right, to practice calmness in always, not only in the anxious and the excitement and the negative type of energy, but even when you've um, made a big victory. Maybe this is one of the things we do in our tournaments too, right? We don't parade around. We don't do we don't jump around. We can't do that, right? So even when you win, you can't be going You can't do that. Um, and that's also the practice. Not be overly joyed, overly excited, right? Even taking those things and being calm and process it. And interestingly enough, right? There's a I don't recent neuroscientist who is now is on YouTube all over the place, and he talks about a lot of things about dopamine and all these studies that's done and etc. You know, and he talks now scientifically, right? That's also the things that he recommends people to practice, right? Because when we get this excitement, we get this kick of dopamine. It's drug. It's like it's a drug addiction, right? Natural drug, but it's still a form of drug, and that's why we also do drugs for that reason, for that high. But when you reach that high, then you have this deep crash, right? And when you have that crash, you get into this deeper, this kind of depression, right? Um, and and then it's harder to get motivated again to get back up and get going. But if when you don't get excited like that, then it doesn't spike as high, and you don't have the deep crash, and you're able to go ahead and get up and maintain consistency in your motivation after the fact.
Mm.
So you can sustain continual progression and growth, right, on a steady basis, rather than, you know, peaking and then dropping and then, you know, getting up slowly, not sometimes, seeking for the next high, right? Um, so you become much more productive. Um, well, it's so funny right now, right? These days, I've been watching a lot of things, and that all these science things, right, uh, that's coming out are all supporting actually ancient practices, you know, of ancient Eastern practice, Western practice of prayer, meditation, etc. Right? Like this things with intermittent fasting, or the thing of fasting, the benefits of fasting. Well, fasting's been going on since biblically since the beginning of man. And in Eastern culture, fasting was a big part of also our meditative practices, right? Um, this new thing of cold water, right? cold treatment,
Cold
right?
plunge. Yeah.
It's like a very popular thing now. They think, oh yeah, Wim Hof. He came up with it, whatever. Actually, it's ancient. I mean, that's one of the also martial art practices. That's also what we've done during winter in Korea. Is super cold. Winter training, outdoor training. They go and with bear skin, topless, in their tobok pants, running in the snow, rolling in the snow, going under the plunge, the water plunge, sitting and meditation under freezing waterfall. These are these are practices that's always been done. But I'm so you know I'm I'm pleased that the scientific studies, right? These things all support these type of ancient practices.
Well, they support, basically that it's actually good for you to be in stressful situations.
Oh,
It's good for you to be stressed. It's good for you to have your body stressed,
that,
cold or hot or like whatever. Like,
exactly,
all that
exactly,
actually benefits you. It makes you, stronger, healthier. Uh, as
exactly. So think about that, right? So what's happening in our society right now?
we've
Huh?
perfected the inside.
Yeah. So we've gotten rid of all of that. We've gotten rid of all of that, right? Which with all the comfort and technology, whatever. This is what the detriment. This is the detriment of our society. That we're too dependent on all these other things. What is the key to health, longevity, clarity of mind, physical strength, as well as your emotional state is being active, doing work, physical work, movement, uh, uh,
Stress.
stress, dealing with stress, physical stress, you know. Uh, and here we are trying to get rid of all those things, right? And in return, we get uh, uh, we get masses of different forms of anxiety and stress, um, which are unhealthy.
Yeah, it's by trying to eliminate stressors, we create more stress, unhealthier stresses.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, the I mean, if you get hungry and think you go out and hunt, you go and farm your land. I mean, those are physical activities you got to do, and as you do that is what helps you to be more healthy and more strong. Whereas now, you're hungry, whatever it is, you got to think about, okay, the money. How do I make the money? How do I, and this is a mental, just a sitting around mental stress, which is detrimental.
mhm. So going back to calmness, practicing calm. Uh, you talk in your article about uh, most, knowing something incrementally or intellectually versus it becoming muscle memory, and especially in the context of being in a fight or being in a physical altercation and while remaining calm. It's like, how are those things related? It's because you know I mean, I know, but I think it'd be helpful to hear from you, sir. It's calmness, practice creating muscle memory and then actually needing to use it in a real or even just competition and being able to do it effectively under stress. How are those related to each other?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're not calm, you can't think, you know. So if you can't think, then it doesn't matter how much you know. It doesn't matter what you know. Uh, I- it's not going to serve you. You have to be calm in order to have a clear mind. So, in then with a clear mind, then you can determine what to do. Okay. So now, when you have that, then when you practiced enough, right? It has to be enough, right? I mean, your response, your speed of your response, will be determined on how much you repetition, how much you practice, and also how much that you're able to um, um, had dynamic practice in application of those techniques and how effective you were. That's going to determine your successful outcome, how successful you are. But the first and most important thing, whether you have trained, whether you have great speed, whether you've trained in much repetition to have the muscle memory in order to respond, uh, well, if you're not calm, then you will not be able to react uh, in the proper time necessary. So if you can't think, then you can't perform. So is it what you're talking about muscle memory? Was it does it just happen? Does it just happen that when somebody attacks you, you just go? Well, uh, that also has to be trained, right? And that's kind of the type of training. I mean, I went many years. I went in 1990. I went to Israel, and I did a movie for a Navy SEALs movie, and I had the opportunity to meet with the Israeli commandos. And I never heard, and nobody here ever heard of Krav Maga. Okay, and but I did as I was introduced to Krav Maga, and Krav Maga basically is a martial art. Is not it's just basic, striking, blocking, whatever. Okay, it's not extensive. But what makes the Krav Maga, what makes them effective is that it is the method that they train, right? It's the method of training, and that type of training is that that shock, that kind of shock therapy. It's the they're sitting calm, whatever, and then boom, somebody jumps and attacks them from behind, and or four or five people gang up together and attack them, and they gotta respond, and so it's creating that fight or flight, how to deal with that rush of adrenaline, and boom, respond to it quickly, and uh, so, uh, so you have to determining the effectiveness of your even the muscle memory of technique. You even though you've gained that, you have to practice it in that way in order to be truly effective. But definitely, you don't have the muscle memory. You just have rudimentary idea of the techniques, and you're not calm. Then you're really screwed.
It, it goes out the window.
Yeah, you won't do anything. You can't. And this is the many times, many thing situations, even when martial artists, right? If you have not engaged in the sparring or in the competition or in that type of fight scenario, that in self-defense situation, that a lot of times they freeze up, and they can't do anything. It's so um, so it has to be trained, uh, uh, both the repetition to gain the muscle memory, and also uh, you know doing dynamic training, and also uh, uh, practicing the quick response, the to develop a better response under that fight or flight situation.
Yes, sir. Well, I remember. I mean, this has nothing to do with martial arts, but it was, um, during when my wife was pregnant with our son, we were going to all these classes with a doula. Basically, she was, you know, walking us through everything we needed to learn and be prepared for when, for the day, for one day, for when, for the birth of our son. And when you're in the hospital, these are the things that are going to happen. And if you need to know what's happening. You need to be in control. You need to advocate for yourself. You want to ask questions. You don't want to just have them inject you with everything and everything. It's like, whatever interventions have to be absolutely necessary. And, for that entire year that we went through that training, I was able to like spout it out, like no problem. I learned all of it. Like
Right, right.
I,
But
I,
when
I learned all of it, all these different emergency scenarios. Here's what they'll try to do. Here's what you should do if you want. Like, because we were going for like as natural a birth as possible.
Right.
And I was like, I'd meet with my family and I'd kind of fill them in, and it's like I had it all memorized.
Right. Right.
The But then when we're actually there, and ultimately it was not, you know, uh, the birth we envisioned. It was a very stressful situation. It was ultimately, my wife had a C-section,
Yeah.
emergency C-section,
Yeah.
and I remember being in such a state of fear that I was frozen and could not advocate for myself, even though I
Yeah.
intellectually had done
Yeah.
a year
Yeah.
of learning.
Yeah.
And for us, our doula was there. We hired her to be there, and so when we froze, she would like immediately step in without fear, knowing exactly what was happening, and be able to advocate for us to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But that was like, I thought back, what could have I done differently during that
Yeah.
year? Like a year of learning, and still like I froze, my wife freezes, and we can't
Yeah.
advocate for ourselves,
Yeah.
and things don't go according to plan.
Yeah.
And I was like, the one thing I thought of was our doula. I should have asked our doula to like actually role play those scenarios, actually
Yeah.
put that under pressure,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
have us like, you know, create those scenarios in advance
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
practice the response, because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
wasn't enough to
Yeah.
learn it
Yeah.
intellectually.
Pressure
You
test. You need to be
Yeah,
pressure tested. Yeah.
yeah. So the role playing, I think, would have been valuable, and it's something
Yeah.
we do with our sales team.
Yeah.
We role play, we practice certain things
Yeah. Yeah.
so that they're prepared. And
Yeah.
so this doesn't apply just to martial art. It's like anything that's important to you.
Yeah.
And so that's, next
Yeah.
time, or that's something I would have done differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. You have to be pressure tested. Pressure tested. You have to practice dealing with pressure. Yeah. So just having intellectual knowledge, just going through, the techniques and not, this is why, when, and, many of my instructors and, I mean, me too. I mean, they don't like it. How can you like it? But when in class, many of the students, they'll freeze up for those things, because how I address them, how I confront them, they don't expect it, and boom, they're shocked. And when they do that, as like I tell them all the time, it's like, that's like deer seeing headlights. And so when you see deer seeing headlights, if you just sit there, you see the lights, you go, what is that? And you just sit, freeze, you get run over. So you have to go ahead and respond. You see it's coming, you better move out of the way, right? You can't freeze. And so, how do you teach that? How do you teach that? Well, if every time you see the headlights, they freeze and you stop, then they don't learn. So, so I tell them that if you do that and you freeze, I'll run you over. And that's exactly what happens, right? Because when they do that and they're thinking of the worst case scenario, they're thinking, oh, oh, it's okay, try it again, whatever, da da da, or explain it again in a slower pace, or talk to them softly and kind of guide them through. I don't do that, right? I attack them even harder. I push them even further, um, and in the beginning, all of them were very it's very bad at dealing with those situations, and many students break down. Of course, I don't do this to beginners or students, but these are to my instructors, right? To the
Mhm.
instructors. And what you find, or what I now is, 3, 4, 5 years later, many years later, you know, these problems, these things that come up, or whatever it is, it doesn't phase them. I might be barking at them, yelling, whatever. It's just like, oh, it's just right. And then when I see that happening, then I go, okay, then I approach differently, right? I don't do the shock or the pressure. Then now we could have conversation, right? Then you can converse, and yeah, you have to do that. I'm and that's one of the many things in especially in the martial art instructors, that they do. They try to please, and they try, you know this is the issue. They're task oriented, right? They want the student to go ahead and complete the task or finish the course, to finish to get their belts and etc. Right? And unfortunately, uh, I don't like that. Right? They're not doing the students justice. Okay, but it's good for business. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? They'll stick around. They'll do well, and they'll remain and continue, etc. But it doesn't help them. It
Mhm.
doesn't serve them. Um, so no, no.
Sure. One of the one of the quotes you have in your article, which is actually different from anything I've seen, because you have something that there's a common saying, "The devil's in the details," but you actually say God is in the details. Uh,
Yeah,
and so I actually had never heard that quote. I don't know if it was yours, but what do you mean by that?
yeah. What part? I mean, I have to know in reference to so.
It's about doing something right, even more doing it beautifully
Oh
requires.
yeah, 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 yeah. Attention to details. Yeah, 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 yeah. Why don't you just read that beginning paragraph there?
Yeah, yeah. So doing something right, even more so doing it beautifully, requires you know it thoroughly, and that means that you have had to pay attention to the details. There are many reasons why a person is not able to see the details, but only one, which must, above all things, in order to see things clearly, the desire to know the truth, to do right.
Yeah, yeah. So when when you say that the devil's in the details, you're talking about the basically the negative consequences. When something fails, when something that you didn't pay attention to and it went wrong, and that's what it means that the devil's in it. So you didn't pay attention to the little things, and that's why you screwed up.
Right.
But when I say God's in the details, it's the same thing, in the sense that it's the when you really examine it, when you see that, when you see the details, then you will prevent from making those mistakes, and you can see the beauty of it. You can, it's the big picture. It's stepping back. It's like, when something is this in front of you, you can only make out, the the little individual part, and you can't see the big picture. You can't appreciate it. So it's being able to see the details but move back and seeing also the big picture, when you're able to then pull back and see all of that with the clarity of the details in mind. Then you can see the full majesty, the full beauty of of what you are doing, that what's there. I mean, one day we'll do our testimony, but I really, as I think everyday things, to watch the sunset. Yesterday I saw the moon, or this morning I saw the moon also. Early, because early morning it's light here at like uh, 8:30 in the morning. Um, but it's beautiful. It's breathtaking, and I wonder about all the little things, how it could be all put together to make such a majestic view. So it's the same, right? When you, by paying attention to the details, you can see the beauty, right? The beauty of its whole, the beauty of its simplicity, the beauty of the connections of the simple parts in creating the larger overall task thing, whatever it is. you know it's so yeah, so definitely, uh God is in the details, and it's this attention to detail that we completely lack. And that is the thing that I uh uh am uh sometimes overbearingly, okay, uh, stress my instructors to do, and which they fail in the beginning all the time, you know. But as they start to see more, well, first being practicing calmness, right, which requires them to be more confident and more empowered. And then that makes them calm. And when they're calm, they're not stressed, and they can see more. They can think clearly. They can see clearly. They can even feel and emote clearly. Then they can start to see greater details in things.
Yeah. Beautiful, sir. Well, I think we're almost at time, sir. But is there anything else you wanted to share as it relates to your article or discuss that you feel is important? I know we're doing kind of three parts here, so there's
Yeah,
more to come. But I just didn't want to miss anything before we wrap up.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I, the way I talk, I mean, speak, and the way I write, I mean, are two different things. Sometimes I'm not as eloquent and articulate in the speaking, right? Um, so maybe I can just end with one of these paragraphs here. One second. So, so these called two paragraphs I like to end with. Um, Anything else other than the desire to know and learn the truth is a hindrance and a distraction from the truth, and nothing matters more than the truth. In the process of arriving at this state of being, one must identify, address, confront, and resolve all the reasons for not being able to see things clearly. This is, in fact, is the true study, goal, and purpose of Hwarang Do. Ultimately, true calmness arises from a peace of mind and true serenity that comes from embracing and surrendering to God.
Yes, sir.
And yes, I do believe that to be the truth.
Excellent, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Fernie. It was good to see you again,
Thank you.
and I'm looking forward to this year, uh, to our future podcasts.
As am I, sir. We'll try to get on a more regular schedule, but I enjoy these every time. I get to just revisit so many of the small lessons that I now kind of take for granted, or they're kind of in the background. They're part of
Yeah,
my operating system, but then I get to open the hood on some of these things that have shaped my life and my career, thanks to you and thanks to Hwarang Do. And it's really cool to explore them. And it also helps me because I have students of my own in the business world, so I can then break it down for them as well so that they can benefit. So thank you, sir.
yeah, yeah. Excellent, excellent.
Okay.
Okay, very good,
Okay, sir. Well, we'll see you next time. Harang.
very good. Hold on.